Welcome to the People and Planet podcast, a show all about human health, planetary health, and the links between them. I'm your host, Ali Al-Hamed, an integrative nutrition health coach with a master's in environmental sustainability. I spent most of my life exploring these topics, and this podcast is my effort to collect and deliver information from experts to improve the quality of your life and that of our planet. Thank you so much for being here. This podcast is for educational purposes only and should never replace the advice of your doctor or physician. Always consult a medical professional before making any changes or adding anything new to your diet, lifestyle, or medication protocol. Today, I'll be interviewing Alina Polner, who is an experienced life coach and therapist in London and the Cotswolds, working with a wide range of clients, including professional athletes and business people. Her specialty is in helping people to identify their purpose in life. Alina studied psychology, neuroscience, clinical hypnotherapy, biohacking, mindfulness, meditation, holistic solutions, nutrition, and other topics related to mental and physical wellness. With time and research, she eventually created the High Life method as a path for anyone looking for a more meaningful and satisfying way to enjoy life. She says her method is all about bringing your own personal kind of high or elevated energy into your life, whatever that may be for you. The purpose of this method is to improve overall health and well-being while also feeling more fulfilled, productive, and connected with those around you. Alina uses archetypes as a tool to support her clients' self-actualization process. Archetypes are different energy potentials in every person, and we all contain a variety of different archetypes. There are many branches of understanding archetypes in the psychology literature, but today we're drawing on the one stemming from Greek mythology. Alina argues that understanding how the different archetypes are expressed within us can greatly help bring balance into our lives, have healthier and more meaningful connections, and help us resolve trauma. I look forward to sharing our conversation with you today. Well, hi, Alina. Thank you so much for being here with me. Thank you so much for taking the time. It's so great to see you. It was lovely meeting you a few months ago at the Health Optimization Summit. When we first met and we had a few chats since then, I really enjoyed getting to know you and getting to know about your health coaching practice, the High Life, and the different psychology approaches that you take to your practice. So thank you so much for being here, and I can't wait to get into these different topics.
Thank you so much, Alia, for having me here. I'm excited and I'm so proud to be here. And I know how seriously you take your guests. So being here is a huge privilege. And thank you so much. I hope I will be helpful and insightful today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to have you here. And I just want to jump right into it. So tell me a little bit about you and tell me about the High Life, your coaching practice. I love the name and I love the meaning behind it. So tell everyone what it's all about.
So the High Life is my own method, which took many years to create. I've tried so many different approaches, practices myself as a typical healer and hero. I've started with myself. So my first education was I'm a qualified lawyer, and this is how my career has begun. And then, as always, we step on our hero journey, which I stepped on myself, and started with psychology. And I found my first psychologist who helped me and showed me the way in which direction I should take. And after healing myself, I realized that this is my purpose and my journey to help others to overcome those things that I overcame myself. And it took me many, many years and huge investments, financial and time. You know, we pay for things in life with two things, with time or money. And I paid with both, with time and money. And after a while, once you try everything and you see what works, what doesn't work, how it works, etc., you start figuring out what could be the shortcut to success, what could be the shortcut to self-actualization, what could be the shortcut to achieve your fullest potential. What do you must do and what you can skip, what is important and what is unimportant. And this is how the High Life method was created. I've tried so many things, and I've invested many years of my life in my studies, in my research. I work along with different professional entities and organizations. I contribute them with my research and they share their research with me. And this is how it error and trial, I have created my own method, which is ultimately based on, why is it called the High Life? The high life is when you're feeling high, is when you feeling great about yourself, when you're confident, when your self-esteem is high, when you achieve what you want. And high life also reflects on your neurochemistry. You feel high when you don't feel low. We know that low neurochemistry and high neurochemistry is what basically, like one of my teachers says, that psychology is a metaphor of neuroscience. And it's true, because our neuroscience, our neurochemistry is what makes us feel certain way. And what can we do on physical level, on mental level, on our spiritual level to align ourselves, our brain, our gut, and our heart, so that we can start living our life. Because up until then, we don't live our life. We live the life we think we're supposed to live, but it has nothing to do with our authentic lifestyle.
And so I love how you talk about the heart, the brain, and the gut. And I know very well from my health coaching practice that all those things impact our neurochemistry. What we eat, how we feel, our heart, and what we think. All this impacts neurochemistry and how we feel in our life, whether we feel blocked towards our goals or whether we feel like we can achieve our goals. So what are some of the main components of the high life when you talk about, uplifting people and letting them feel high, letting them feel good about their life versus low? So what are the main components that you coach people through?
When I started my own psychotherapy, meaning that I started my work with the psychotherapist, I realized that it can take years and years of my life. We're not getting anywhere. And we're not getting anywhere because no matter how deeply you get into your psyche, if you don't sleep well, if you don't eat well, if you do not rest well, this will all be definitely positive and will give you a certain impact, but it won't change your life. That's why the high life method is a 360 degrees approach to you as an individual. And of course, if you're not sleeping well, nothing else matters. Without a proper sleep, you cannot recover, you cannot work, you're not living your life, you're not using your potential, as you are in survival mode most of the time. So if the client, for instance, comes to me with a problem of sleeping, this will be the first problem. We'll be trying to find the root cause. Why is it happening? Why the client can't sleep? What's going on? And then from that level, we can move to the next level and to the next level and to the next level. And like in a Maslow pyramid, we can get to the self-actualisation level through going through different steps. But most of the time it's so much easier than it seems. We make small changes and then we get the motivation to keep going and going. If we're going to create the goal, which is going to be on the top of the pyramid, most likely we're never going to get there, as the separation from here to there is huge. Your brain won't be able to create the path to get there. And this is how one of the major tools I use in my practice are archetypes. And this is something we wanted to talk about, isn't it?
Yes, let's jump right into it. So tell me about archetypes and how you use that in your coaching.
Absolutely. So archetypes, I love personally working with archetypes, and they help me tremendously because archetypes are universal energy patterns. And we as human beings, we know how to recognize them. We have them on our unconscious level. We have them on our conscious level. Sometimes we can see the same patterns which happened in some other people's lives. So the archetypes, major energy patterns which we all have within us. And because we are living in a global crisis of self-identification, so many people don't know who they are because we've been conditioned from early childhood that this is good, this is not good, we can be this, we can be that. We learn to be this adjusted children and adjust to the environment all the time. So if you ask ourselves honestly, who am I? It's so hard to find the answers. That's why we try to find at least something we can stick to, so that this is for sure. Then we can kind of create this as a foundation and jump from it to the next level. At least some things in our life are certain. So if we look at archetypes, we have different energies within us. And archetypes can change within our life. As when we're young, we have certain archetypes. And then as we grow older, different archetypes start manifesting in our life. If you look at the whole archetypal model, what is very important to understand that we all have persona, we have animus and anima, we have the shadow, all those things which were not accepted in our childhood, which were repressed by our parents, which were divided by our parents, most likely went into our shadow. And there is such a thing as called as the gold of the shadow. These are the things we repressed within ourselves, and they still manifest in our life through the problems, through the health issues, through the insecurities, many problems, but we refuse to accept them because then we need to look in this shadow. But once we look there, yes, we feel uncomfortable because we want our life to go on as it always did, as we know, we've learned, and this is what is called the homeostasis, is our whole body doesn't want change because the body doesn't know whether the change is going to be for better or for worse. And the body will maintain the homeostasis for as long as possible. And, the brain doesn't differ whether it's good for you or bad for you. As long as it was yesterday, it's good for the brain. That's why any change is so complicated. But if you look at the archetypes, then you start seeing the same patterns in yourself. And then you can see, oh my God, maybe this is actually me. Maybe then you can detach from yourself as yourself and look at yourself from a bigger perspective as a hero, heroine, or in a book, let's say. And then you can understand, oh yes, indeed, these are my subconscious scenarios that are actually being played out in my life. And once I look at these hero stories, I can actually change the path of my life by accepting my superpowers and letting go of those things which I don't want.
So would you say that you use the tool of archetypes in your high life method when you're thinking about self-actualization? So you kind of make sure the foundation is there, like sleep and stress management and good food, because it's hard to be high when we're not eating well, right? It's hard to have high vibration. So you take care of the foundation, and then you look at the archetypes, which are different energy patterns within us, and you try to help people, would you say, find their true selves or the different types of energy within themselves to help break patterns and bring potential forward? Is that what the archetype tool is mainly used for?
Yes, you are absolutely right. If you don't sleep well, eat well, and have a certain clean lifestyle, then it makes no sense. You might find some motivation elsewhere, but it's not going to work. I'm also the qualified flow coach, so I worked along with the Flow Research Collective, and the flowy lifestyle is actually one of the foundation of the high lifestyle. Is that if you want to be able, and flow is not something a woo-woo thing. Flow has a neuroscience explanation, and it's a certain brain wave which get into the flow when you become your most creative self and you do not think, you just know, when you can get in a flow with other people. I have quite a few clients who have been depressed for so many years as they've lost this image of the future. They couldn't create the image of the future which would make them happy. And in this case, the archetypes are incredible tool in restoring the wholeness of yourself and seeing yourself not just as one archetype which you have developed. We have many more than one, but most of the time the burnout happens when we use just one of our archetypes and we think that's all it is. And most of the time it is a persona. This is something we show to the world and we think that all it is. But in order to find yourself, you have to look at yourself as a bigger picture through the archetypes.
Do you mind maybe going through a few examples of the archetypes? Like I remember you shared with me like Aphrodite and Hermes. And so we can just get an idea of the different types. And then if you don't mind sharing a client story, obviously anonymously, of someone who was depressed or who was a bit blocked in their life and how you brought in one or two or four or five of the different archetypes and how you helped him or her break through that pattern with using this tool so people can understand and conceptualize what archetypes can do for them and what they actually look like.
Absolutely. So we have 7 main female archetypes. We can look at them from the Greek goddesses perspective, or we can look at them of the more simplified version as maiden, which is Persephone. We can look at the sage. So there are 7. I'm going to name them now. Okay. So this is the sage, which is Athena, Persephone, which is maiden archetype, Demetra, which is mother archetype. Then we have Artemis, which is huntress archetype, Aphrodite, which is lover archetype, and Hera, which is queen archetype. These are the main Western 7 archetypes. There is many more than this, but these are the most wildly developed in our culture. And if you look at the storytelling, fairy tales, myths, they would more or less all maintain these 7 major female archetypes. So if you look at the story of Demetra as a mother, this is the absolute mother. This is the mother. It's amazing as a woman to develop, as a mother, to develop this a Demetra archetype. Is it's really a caring, loving archetype. As when we become mothers, we have to sort of, Demetra has to visit our house in order to bring up this wholeness of a woman and being able to dedicate a part of yourself to your child in order to emotionally attune to the child. But if you have too much of Demetra's story was quite sad, as she had just one daughter, Persephone, and she was so attached to her. It was so hard for her to let go of her daughter, so that the daughter was literally stolen by the hate into the underworld. And this is often the journey the woman and the mother who are so connected have to undergo in order, as what we call it in psychology, to separate each other. And the story of Persephone is the story of a young girl who was a projection of her mother, who didn't know who was she. She was so preoccupied with her mother's needs that she hasn't been able to develop any personality as such, as she was solely the projection of her mother's need. And that what often happens, a good girl from a good family would marry a bad guy from a bad guy, who would see this idyllic, beautiful woman from a beautiful girl from a good family, and then he would project, and it's extremely appealing for many men actually to take this personality and do whatever you want to do. And if the man is not mature enough, that he would go for a girl like this, and he would project everything he wants into her, and she would just follow. But unfortunately, the story of Persephone and Demetra was quite a sad story, as once Persephone was stolen by Hades, the Demetra was absolutely devastated, and she tried finding her. She went everywhere and she couldn't find her, so she approached Zeus and said, "Zeus, where is my daughter?" And he said, "Everything's well. I've just, she went all the way down to the underworld. She married Hades. He loved her. She loves him. Everything's fine. Why are you worried?" And then her level of devastation was so big that literally the mortals on the earth started to die, as she was so depressed. And that what often happens if the woman hasn't developed any other archetype except of Demetra archetype. After their children leave, it's called the emptiness syndrome. After the child leaves the nest, the woman becomes so depressed that most of the major depression disorders are actually of the women who haven't developed other archetypes apart from Demetra. And if there are no children, then it's like, then I have no one to care about. So it's very important to develop other archetype, not for the sake of that you're not good enough, but for the sake of support for yourself. Because this love can be toxic for the child, because sometimes we have to let go. And when our children grow up, we need to let go.
So Demetra, which is the mother archetype, if it's healthy, it means she's a very present mother, very loving mother, caring mother, but she also has other archetypes. But if it's unhealthy, it means she's too attached to her children. She's only a mother. It's almost like
exactly
is taking over all her life. And this is when it becomes out of balance. And when you have someone like this, you would coach them to help them develop other energies in their life.
Absolutely. Exactly. And I myself, for many years, have been in Demetra archetype. It's very fulfilling archetype. I have 3 kids on my own. And, if Demetra hasn't finished, as I say, there is a split. So there is a huge split. Some women, they are afraid to develop any Demetra, as they think that this is how they're going to be so attached, and most likely, like if you look at it from an even bigger perspective, then your attachment style you have with your partner, your children, will reflect the attachment style you had with your mother. Mm-hmm. And many women who had avoidant mothers most likely will not see what the Demetra archetype is, as they will find it hard to attach to the child. That is, it for the psychological level, it's not safe. So there are women who completely ignore Demetra archetype, and it will manifest in their life as the need to care for someone, but they might be afraid to step into this energy and become caring, as it's just not safe. Or there could be the opposite, women who would just develop only this archetype and think that that's what the world is all about, and they will feel guilty sometimes to actually even want something else, and that's a different story.
Okay, got it. What about the other archetypes? Let's bring in another one or two. And
Absolutely. There is Artemis. So Artemis is a huntress archetype. It's an independent woman who enjoys hunting. It's actually a woman who was helping other women, who was supporting the women community because she was strong, she was driven, she was very goal-oriented. And when we want to take over our career path in life, we need to develop huntress archetype. We can't do it without the huntress archetype because we can't. It's the responsibility, it's the vision, it's the direction. And if you want to do business, you need to have the huntress archetype. And this is how we have to bring it up within ourselves. It might be not your core archetype. You might be Demetra at core, but you need to develop a part of this. Otherwise, you might end up in codependency. If you don't have a healthy level of huntress, you are not able to hunt. Then you're not able to survive. So then you're solely dependent on someone or something. And it's extremely important to acknowledge that we all have huntress archetype.
can I just ask you about Artemis? So if a woman has too much of Artemis, she's too goal-oriented, and again, it's too inflated where she doesn't look and put her energy into other things in her life. But if she doesn't have enough, then it's really hard to move forward in her career. Is that what you're saying? If that's the imbalance, too much and too little.
Yes, both are not good for you. Too much or
Right.
too little will be compensated in your other parts of your life. So it's always like an overcompensation. If you overcompensate in just one archetype, then we will burn ourselves out until we accept to acknowledge that we have other archetypes. In order to be whole, we need to accept ourselves. So most likely, if just one archetype is the core archetype and other archetypes are not acknowledged by the person, then they will be in the shadow. So they will manifest through the partners, through the family, through the money, through other situations, as these are the opportunities to see yourself as whole. As how else would you make any change? It's either we follow what we love, but when we're afraid to follow what we love, we'll have the problems, so we'll have to deal with them. And while we're going to be dealing with them, we will be able to discover our other parts of ourselves.
Okay, so can you give an example if I have too much of the huntress in me? What would happen in my relationships with my partner, with my children? Like, what could potentially happen? What does that look like if it starts to manifest with other relationships in someone's life?
Oh no, absolutely. In relationship, it will manifest as overdriven masculine energy. As it's actually okay and great to be a huntress when it's appropriate. If you huntress in your work, perfect. But if you're huntress in bed, and if you're huntress with your partner, then you will, unless the partner will project his inner weak person, and unless the partner will project the mother figure in you, it's not okay. Because you will either attract a non-confident and very sort of immature and insecure partner who will look at you and admire your huntress as they would just not have it in them. But in relationship, you have to be a lover. In relationship, you need to switch on your lover energy. You need to enjoy yourself. You need to be able to surrender with a man. And it doesn't matter. Many women think that we either have to be weak or strong, and we can't be both. We can be both.
Weakness isn't weak. It means like feminine energy, tender energy, soft energy, passive. Being passive is as important as being active. We can't be stimulated and active all the time. But when people hear the word passive, they're like, oh, so I should just do nothing and just allow. It's like, actually, there is a very beautiful practice in allowing things to be. We're human beings. We're not human doings. It's important to do. It's also important to be. The yin and the yang, right? So
yeah, animus and anima, that's what the part of archetypes. Animus is masculine and anima is feminine. That was Carl Jung is saying about it. Yeah, so we have this both energy and we can balance them within ourselves.
Yeah.
So if we attract weak men, that it means that we are too strong in something. That it means that maybe we have repressed our feminine sides, that it manifests through attracting someone we actually don't want to attract.
Okay, you're going to go on to another archetype. Was it the sage or was it?
So the next one could be the lover archetype, the Aphrodite. She was, so in goddess archetypes, there were virgin goddesses and there were the non-virgin goddesses. So archetypes like Artemis, like Athena and Hera, they have never, why they were called virgin archetypes is that back then in ancient Greece mythology, they never been raped or humiliated by men. So these are the archetypes which can actually survive in the world without men. When Hera, Demetra, and Persephone, they were all multiple times raped or abused by men. So they're called the vulnerable goddesses. And there was just one goddess who was called alchemical goddess. This was the magical alchemical goddess. So alchemistry. So this is like a magical goddess, and every single person has got their lover archetype within their psyche. And this was the Aphrodite. Aphrodite could make a blind person see. She could make the impossible possible. This is the energy. When you bring it up within yourself, it's almost as nourishing and inspiring. This is the sexual energy. This is the energy of wealth. This is actually where the money starts coming to you, because you manage to enjoy them. And when you can, the life is dull without lover energy. The life is not interested. And to be honest, so many women and men have repressed lover, because we don't need lover for survival. We can survive without lover. We can just achieve. We can overcompensate. We can just do and do and do and do all the time. We don't have time to enjoy. We don't make time to enjoy because we don't see value in it. We can't just survive on enjoying life.
Right. And not just that, we were taught not to seek value in it, right? Our value comes, or our worth comes, from being productive, or, the work that we're doing, especially for men. So I think there's also some conditioning of the 21st century fast-paced life that we feel guilty when we slow down. We feel guilty when we seek pleasure in life, or we find joy in just whatever we're doing, whether it's a relationship or it's just,
Absolutely. And it's scary because we see the world and we see like what's happening now. We almost devalue this part of ourselves. We devalue the enjoyment. We devalue the small things. We devalue. It's so important. We have to get more. Look at the Instagram. Look at the world. People are showing more, more, more. It's never enough. You look at yourself and you feel like, I'm never enough. But once you actually embody the lover archetype, you start feeling that enough is enough. And enough is actually right here and right now. This is when you don't want to go out for the sake of just going out. You want to put the dress on. You want, or I don't know, the jeans on. It doesn't matter what makes you happy. Or you want to put a lipstick, or you just want to make a bun, or you just actually enjoy the whole preparation and the process of going. And then you go and then you drink a tea or wine or whatever you like, and you feel it. And this is ultimately so attractive. As we can talk about for hours and hours the things we hate the most. But if you just try to recall the people in your life who talk about what they love, you will recognize them straight away. We remember when other people talk about what they love. We remember that. We feel great about it. We love hearing like, oh my God, I love going shopping, or I love going and wearing something. I love doing this. And it's so repressed in us as women, as we almost feel guilty and ashamed sometimes to want these things, because we need to be driven, we need to be efficient, we need to be great, we need to achieve. And it's very sad. And it's also very sad in men, because men have to develop the lover archetype within themselves. Otherwise, they will always project it into women, and it will never feel like it's enough. They will have countless affairs and women around them, as they will be this vampires for this lover energy from others.
Yeah. I have to say, one thing I have noticed living between the East and the West, I'm originally from Kuwait and half Armenian. And so I've lived a huge portion of my life in the Middle East, is that in the Middle East, our culture is to enjoy life. We don't feel guilty for it. And we also don't feel guilty for resting. The West is not like that. It's the 9.
It's not like that.
You feel really terrible. I have a lot of clients that feel terrible that are also based in Kuwait, but they have been westernized in terms of their work ethic, and they feel guilty, or they feel like their worth and their value is attached to their work. And so I've noticed that we don't actually have that problem back home, where people feel guilty for pleasures, enjoying a simple like tea or a meal with their family and not letting it take 20 minutes. It takes an hour. Our family meals take 2 hours sometimes. Not feeling guilty for a little bit of a dessert or something sweet at the end, not feeling guilty for a siesta at the end of the day or in the middle of their workday, which I think is so beautiful. And people don't realize in the West that this is actually a cornerstone for health. We have to, as you say, enjoy life. But I wonder how else this lover archetype, or this Aphrodite archetype, is showing up in the Eastern cultures that I'm familiar with. I wonder how it might be showing up differently. Maybe it's over, right? Like a Las Vegas, too much pleasure, too much shopping, too much eating, too much indulgence. What do you think about that?
Too much of anything is not good for you. Yeah. So if you have just developed a lover archetype and it works, and as a woman or as a man, you just enjoy your life most of the time, then this is the addiction. This is where the addiction will kick in, because you will be too much feminine energy, too much anima is too much wine, too much dessert, too much resting, too much yoga, too much of everything. It could also become an overcompensation for everything. It could be an ability to see life as whole again. So too much of anything is not good for you. Then that is ultimately the codependency. This could be the category of women who will always be looking for the new relationship to fulfill them. And this will never happen. Or for the man looking for projected a lover and seeking this pleasure all the time. No, we need to balance the lover energy with other archetypes. And yeah, that you are so right. It's true.
Yeah. I'd love to hear about Sage. I don't know why. I don't know much about her. I don't think we spoke about her before, but there's something there that's like piquing my interest. Do you mind sharing a little bit about her?
Absolutely. So the Sage archetype is a very beautiful archetype. It's a very intellectual, strategic minded women who can see the situation as whole. If you look back in history, so Athena was the one who was strategically in charge of the Trojan War. So she was the woman among men who would help them to gain a fuller perspective with having her feminine energy, with not being like Artemis. She would fight men. She would be equal to them. Athena would not be equal to them. She would be equal to them, but she would not fight them. She would be the one who will give them the support to discover their fullest self, to find the solutions. And Athena, for instance, it's a first lady archetype. It's either the woman who would be the right hand to her man and would be like a back office, like the man would be the king and she would be the queen next to him and would do the, like a first lady job. Mm-hmm. Well, that could be, if she chooses a career, then she would be the one, I don't know, a secretary or someone who would actually do the job which is not being seen, and the man would be like what they like to say about Athena, only heroes could apply. Athena is very strong, is very capable woman who has a great ability to plan, and she's very wise, and she can see the opportunity and find the unorthodox solutions emotionally. So she can be logical and strong. And that's what Athena is. Athena is a great strategist. And I associate myself highly as Athena archetypes when I work and what I do. This is what I help my clients to help them. And that's why I have a lot of male clients as Athena archetype. I help them to gain the bigger picture, to give them something that they lack to see, that like a blind spot for them. I see them as a whole picture and I help them get where they want to get. This is the sage archetype.
So Athena is the sage archetype. And so what happens when we have too much Athena or we have too little Athena? What does that look like manifested in us as a personality or as a person?
Yeah, well, too much of anything, as we realize, is not really good for you. Then too much of anything, you will think that your future only depends. If you are a wife, then you might not actually be a wife. You might become a strategist. So then you will forget about Hera, you will forget about your queen and kind of wife archetype, then you will become a business partner to your partner. So you literally will just be in this logical, then if it's too much, then your relationship lack intimacy. They are only like a business model. It's like basically you are business owners. It's not the family, it's not the intimacy, it's not love. You need to have your love archetype. You need to have a little bit of Hera, at least archetype. If you are Athena as a mother, then you will struggle to understand your children. You will want them to grow as fast as possible so that you can teach them skills. You can teach them hunt, you can teach them go, you can teach them strategize. You need to balance yourself with other archetypes. But if you work, then you might only think of yourself as a second person, but you can be the first, you can be the leader as well. It's important to develop other archetypes so that you won't end up in codependency again, be it your job or be it your relationship.
Right.
Because there will be a lot of projected inner self into other people. But as I always say, whatever you admire in others and whatever you hate in others, it's all yours.
Right. I just want people to think about like what it would look like in their lives if they've got too much Athena energy or too little. Like what is it?
They are too, yes, so they are too logical.
Yeah, you're too logical. It's a business relationship with your partner. But what happens if you've got too little? You put your man on a pedestal or your partner on a pedestal. Is that what it looks like if you've got too little Athena energy?
If you've got too little Athena energy, then in order to, let's say, run a household or a life, you need to be smart and you need to have a little bit of a logical thinking, right? So Athena is great in order that if you and your husband, you grow into a bigger family or not family, or just you want to achieve something in life and you do it together as two of you, the Athena gives you the wisdom, gives you the patience, gives you the strategy. So it's great to have Athena, and we all have it within us, within our psyche, and we can always call for this inner Athena to help us navigate and hard situations, or what is the best to do, what would be the best financial solution. It's all about that. Is it better to go for a vacation or invest in the house? We need a bit of that. Otherwise, we're not whole. If you're always in our lover energy, lover wants everything right here, right now, and happen right now. It's a very childish position. Athena gives you the wisdom and the grounding that you can wait, that you can create the strategy, and the strategy will work and you will find the solution. So it's great to have Athena. This is your inner wisdom. This is your intuition. This is your knowledge and experience, which can guide you.
Like, so we've spoken about a few of the archetypes. How would you start helping someone? Like, how would you coach them around this? How would we develop some of these balances? If I've got too much Athena, but too little Artemis, or too much, Aphrodite, like, how do you start to help someone understand? How do you coach someone around this? How do you help someone find those balances? Do they need to buy a book and understand everything first, or what do these sessions look like so people can start to conceptualize the method and the way that you work around these archetypes? Because I think it's pretty fascinating.
So there are a lot of resources. You don't need me to start your work, so you can start reading the book and get the self-reflection and understand how you feel. There's many different books, which resources I can share later and explain more about it. But the way I work with my clients, I speak to my client and I see what current archetypes are manifesting in the client's life, what the clients want, what are the problems, and how within every archetype they manifest. So for instance, if it's the Persephone archetype, and if the woman find it hard with men and want to separate herself, and she's got mother issues and this and that, then obviously we need to develop some other archetypes in order for her to step into her full power. But each of us need the lover archetype. Without lover archetype, life is dull, as I always say. So you can never go wrong unless you have too much of a lover archetype to develop that more and dedicate some time for your lover archetype. So I make an assessment of a client and I see what's happening right now and what is the direction the client wants to go. What is the image of the future the client wants to see? What are the subconscious scenarios which are being played out, and what are the lessons behind it? What we can learn from the past in order to move on to the future. So I help them with the assessment, and I help them to understand, like, for instance, is this your core archetype? Is this really what you like? For instance, if we let's say there is Persephone and there is Hestia, they both are very similar. They both were very quiet girls in childhood. They were all very nice girls. You would put her in the room, you would find her in the same room in the same chair an hour later. But they have completely different personality. Persephone, she is very calm and looking for validation from her mother. She is a projection of her mother, and most of the mother wounds, they actually happen with Persephone mentality. Oh, I had a client, she was thinking she was a Persephone, but in fact she was Hestia. Hestia is actually a beautiful, wise, very spiritual woman. This is the woman who appreciates being alone. She appreciates her own time. Most of the time, she would find her in relationship with Hermes, who loves to travel and who loves to explore the world. And she would look after the house. She would look after the beauty of her inner self. She's very grounding. She doesn't need overstimulation. She is okay on her own. But if you have too much of Hestia archetype, then obviously you can become a lone wolf. So you don't want that either. All archetypes are beautiful, and I think we're all more than capable to have them all at certain point in our lives. And in order to feel whole, and it's like a wheel of balance, right? We can't be just doing work or just can't be doing pleasure. The wheel has different compartments. It needs to be whole. We need to if you only work out, you're not whole. If you only eat and look after your diet and don't look at any other parts of your life, you're not whole. If you only look at archetypes and you're fixating on archetypes and over-analyzing it again and again, you're not whole. So you need to look at yourself as a will, and you need to establish the parts of your life in order to be whole and feel whole. And of course, the importance of the community is a big one. We need the community. We need this enjoyment. We need to feel that we belong. And this is what is lacking here in the Western society. We don't have communities as such.
Yeah, it's such an important factor for health. I mean, the longest study ever done on longevity in Harvard will say that the number one most important component for living a long, healthy life is community.
So true.
Is relationship.
Yes.
It's a beautiful TED Talk by Dr. Robert Wildinger for anyone listening who wants to Google it. I've talked about it a lot on my Instagram, but it's really the best study that's ever done about community and how important it is for our health, for our cardiovascular health, our respiratory health. So yeah, and we are living more alone and more isolated. And even though there's social media and we're so connected on social media, people are not necessarily seeing each other. We're not touching. You know, the fascia, our tissues respond to touch. We're not spending time with our families in the Western world. Luckily for us, the Eastern world is still a little bit like that. But the Western world is, I see through the studies that cardiovascular diseases are going up, and part of it is diet, but another part of it is loneliness. They're not gathering the way they used to. Parents are living alone and getting sick alone, and it's really disheartening. And I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. But it's not revered. It's not something that's respected. We're being taught, you go alone, you take tests alone as a child, you go alone in university, you do work alone, you profit alone, you. And it's actually like the world is asking for more of a collective energy, especially, I could get into the environmental crisis, and that requires collective effort. But yeah, I think when we talk about just health and like well-being, we need each other. We are social beings. So I love that you brought that in, because I think it's such an important piece for anybody wanting to feel well in their life. If you're lonely, it's hard to have energy, right?
And this loneliness is projected into big families. But then if the loneliness comes from the inside, no matter what is on the outside, it's like this inner feeling of not enough makes us go and do a lot of shopping and do all of the outside work rather than inside work. We feel lonely on the inside. But why we feel lonely on the inside? When we are disconnected from ourselves, this is when we are lonely. It's a big side. If you can't be yourself within the community, then you feel like you do not belong. And even if you have this community, not being yourself and not being your authentic self, you are just there but not there. So this self-actualization, I always say, if you want to change the world, change yourself, help yourself, find yourself, heal yourself. Then once you heal yourself, like one person can change millions of people around them. And once you find a way to yourself, then you can help others to find themselves. Once you accept yourself as who you are, then you will accept others as what they are. You won't be trying to change them. Most of the time, we see people not as what they are, as what our projections, inner projections of what we think they are. But this has nothing to do with the reality. And these projections, like for instance, if let's say a woman hasn't developed her ruler energy, her Athena archetype or Artemis archetype, then she would project her need for accomplishment into her man. She wants him to over-deliver. But in fact, this capacity is hers, so she could become bossing around at home. All her unused ruler energy will go into manipulating the family.
Oh, and I have seen that. Not personally in my family, but I've seen that. I've seen that through stories. I've seen that happen, and I've heard about it, and it can be really intense and toxic. You're right. It manifests in other ways. You talk about finding the self. You talk about core archetypes. You talk about the authentic self. How would you advise a client who's coming to you who doesn't feel like they've yet found themselves? How would you advise them to find that core truth or archetype or the authentic self that you speak about? What kind of advice would you give them to like start on that journey, even if they're just at the beginning, just to like start it? How do we even begin that?
How do we even begin that? We begin with self-discovery. So we need to start reading in different resources. So we can start reading about archetypes. We can start researching. We can start self-reflection. There's countless amount of quizzes and different fun resources which could entertain you and give you a lot of different insights. There's amazing Myers-Briggs test, which was actually Myers-Briggs. They both were lovers of Carl Jung, the mother and the daughter. they were both the lovers to the Carl Jung, and they took his concept of archetypes. They took it on a bit different level, and they created the Myers-Briggs test, which gives you a 360 degrees evaluation of yourself, of who you are and your traits according to the questions and your answers. So that is a very useful tool. I highly recommend it. But generally, I think once you start reading about archetypes and looking at yourself, the shadow work is very important. And I have so many clients, and they don't want to go into the shadow work. We don't want to see the parts of ourselves which are not beautiful. We don't want to read about ourselves. We want to see ourselves as what we are. And as soon as we see this shadow in a picture, we just like, this is not about me. This is where the self-sabotage starting happening. The clients don't want to go deeper. So we need to prepare ourselves for it. But actually, shadow work is not scary at all. Yes, we might find some things which we don't want to see about ourselves, but the amount of gold of the shadow we can discover is so much more inspiring. Like, narcissism is not only about the grandiosity, it's also about the inferiority. It's the narcissism can be like, I'm the omnipotent, or it could be I'm not important. This is the same narcissistic trauma. It's just one can switch to one side, the other one to the other side. So I know a lot of people who have this vulnerable child in the shadow, or I have a lot of people who have the shadow of actually omnipotent person, because they have a lot of energy they're not utilizing, as they are afraid to accept it as theirs. So they would project it into the people around, and you'll see others as omnipotent, but actually they're not omnipotent, but they're very potent, they're very strong, they're very powerful, but they're afraid to accept those energies, as that will prove that their parents were wrong, their mother were wrong. And that for the child, if we go back into our developmental trauma, that will prove that my carer is not capable, that I do not exist. So it's very, very deep psychological issues we have got. But I think the simplest way to identify your shadow is to look at yourself around you and see, what do you hate the most in people and what do you love the most in people? And what are the 5 people around you? What are the things you don't like in them? And it keeps happening to you again and again. Again and again, you get to meet the same people, the same pattern, the same situation. I know it's either someone is always late or always lets you down, or there are so many stories which happens to us again and again, and we refuse to acknowledge, thinking that this is just a coincidence, but this is actually the part of ourselves which is giving us an opportunity to complete the lesson and understand what is actually going on. Because most of the time, what we don't accept in others, like, I don't know, it's either we do not allow this for ourselves. For example, I don't know, someone's always late and we are always on time, and this person or these people, we just attract naturally the people who are always late. It means that maybe we should let ourselves not to be perfect. It's okay to be late. Perfectionism is trauma. Nothing is perfect. But the 2 most important negative feelings or emotions which we stem from the childhood is the guilt and the shame. The guilt is, I'm okay, but my actions are not okay. But the shame is much deeper trauma. It's I'm not okay, and my actions are not okay. So it doesn't matter what I do, I'm never okay. My actions are never okay. And I feel so terribly ashamed of it. So I will try to create the facade that I'm okay, but deep inside, I'm not okay. And going inside your trauma is actually like this perfectionism trauma does no good to us. None of us is perfect. We all make mistakes, and mistakes are beautiful. And you will, like me doing this first podcast, of course, I was very nervous and doing it for the first time. Anything you do, but there is always going to be the first time for anything. But once you start doing and start embracing it and not seek the perfection this is the beauty of life comes to a surface to me.
I love that you say that, because I think, failing and mistakes, first, they're part of life. If you're a human being who wants to have anything interesting happening in your life, no matter what it is, we've got to be okay with failing and making mistakes. And you talk to the most successful people on the planet. This is something I share with my clients all the time. They have failed multiple times, and they don't even want to talk to you or do business with you if you haven't tasted failure yourself. And they've reframed the definition of failure. To them, it's how you stand up, not how bad you failed. Elon Musk has talked about how many times he's failed, and Richard Branson and Tony Robbins, and like how many millions, if not billions of dollars they've lost. But it's how you get up, how you learn the lesson, how you talk to yourself. Do you beat yourself up about it for months and years and feel like you're a failure? Or like, okay, I failed at something. This thing didn't work, but how can I learn from it? It's also like reframing the narrative, right? And so I think it's so important, because if you want to lead a life of color, of vibrancy, you have to step outside of the box and do something new.
Definitely.
And you have to be okay with like falling down, whether it's a sport, whether it's something new like a podcast, whatever it is. And so reframing failure or reframing mistakes is part of, having a healthy relationship with life, I think, and with yourself.
It's so true. And I wanted to add something, like my most of my clients, and I can see this in my practice and how it works, like you just don't see it, but most of the, especially male clients, and I think people should know it, most of my ultra high net clients, they had a point in their life and they lost everything. And then they regain the power through the personal transformation. We all go on this hero journey. In some cases, it is the hero journey with your health. Sometimes it is with your money. Sometimes it is with your relationship. But if you're a business owner, you can't expect just going all the way up, 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 up. You will go down and then you will go up again. And it all depends on you and the lessons. But this perfectionism is so toxic. It disables you from doing any action, as you expect nothing but perfection. And this is where the neurosis steps in. People are neurotic because the expectation of themselves and the reality is so different. So they're like, I'd rather do nothing than not be what I think I have to be. And that is what...
And you're stuck.
And that's exactly, and that's what procrastination is all about. Procrastination is the reassurance in your low self-esteem, that you don't deserve, and your lack of competence. This is why we procrastinate so much time. And procrastination stems from the childhood again, from that not getting the feedback for your small achievements. And then we want to show these great achievements to other parents. So yes, can we have a feedback? Can we have this strike? And do we deserve it? And then we create the goals, which are most of the time unachievable. And then we say, until I achieve that, I'm nothing. I'm not going to accept my small achievements.
Right.
And I personally, I don't know any successful client or person who hasn't been to a part in his life when they've lost everything. It's so normal. It's how you recreate yourself from that. Right. Yes. And there's nothing to be ashamed of. This is actually something you can be proud of, because sometimes we need to go all the way back down in order to go all the way back up. Or maybe not all the way back up. Maybe we will settle in the middle, and that will give us the fulfillment. Maybe we are happy there. Who says we have to be here or there? It's all irrelevant. It's how you feel and what you want.
They say, for parents, and I'm not a child psychologist by any means, I've just read, some material on it. But they say, be careful how you speak to your children, because that's how they'll speak to themselves. And so
true.
And especially when they're in like a difficult or challenging situation. And of course, there's always a time and place to discipline children, or we're not going to be perfect ourselves and we're going to like say something to be like, oh, but do this better or whatever. But the idea is here, from what I understand from you, and correct me if I'm like swaying a bit out of our subject, but is an unconditional, not just love, an unconditional acceptance. And one thing is to be like, wow, this is a beautiful painting, when your child does like 3 red strokes and it's like nothing, but it's like also applauding the imperfections and the unconditional acceptance, or also applauding the A that they got in the exam. So it's like unconditional acceptance, but sometimes also stepping out and being like, okay, I'm going to offer you more feedback, positive feedback if something is being,
Extra good. Yeah.
extra, but it's like no matter what, you're unconditionally accepted. And the idea here to come full circle is that later on in life, even when we make mistakes or we fail or we're not perfect, we have unconditional acceptance for self. And I say with clients, it's not about thinking, you're the best thing on planet Earth, because then we'll just walk around being arrogant and...
That's a narcissistic trauma, of course. The projected perfectionism of the parent can be projected into the child.
Right.
This is how it goes. Yeah.
So we have to also offer ourselves constructive feedback and, check ourselves if we're doing something that's not great. And if we make a mistake, be honest and check our egos enough to apologize for and clean up the mess, as I like to say. But no matter what, no matter how bad we've fallen down or made a mistake, we accept ourselves. I accept that I'm human. I was imperfect in this moment, or I made a mistake. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that? Do you think that that's...
I really like the Erich Fromm's perspective. It's a psychologist. He worked after the Second World War, wrote a lot of different books about love, the art of loving and family and everything. So I really like the concept that we have, as we have masculine and feminine, same with the family. The unconditional love should be always coming from the mother. The mother is the source of unconditional love. She's the one who will love you unconditionally, no matter what. You fail, you succeed. No matter what you are, you're loved as who you are, and she would always give you the love and support unconditionally. And the love of the father, or the masculine figure, or the opposite of the mother, is challenging love. So ideally, if mother gave enough of unconditional love and father gives enough of appropriate challenge, the child, which the child can cope with, not something that the child can't do. If the father is overly toxic masculine, he might give the child the challenge that the child can't cope with, and the child will learn that I'm not capable of coping with the challenges. So there is a sweet spot between challenge and boredom. So if the challenge is too big, it's bad for the child as well. So if the father will give enough of the challenge and the mother gives enough of unconditional love, then the child grows up secure and knowing that I'm accepted unconditionally, but I'm also challenged and I can cope with this challenge. And I'm actually great. And challenge is actually fun. I actually love it. Look how capable I am. Yeah. Oh, wow, I can overcome it. Oh my God, this is great. And this is what we have to aim to, the unconditional love. But so many times this gets switched. Sometimes mother gives the competition and the challenge, and the father might give the unconditional love. And that within our psyche sometimes can cause some disturbances. So we all have to aim to this, but it doesn't mean that we aim to perfection. But we need enough of love and we need some challenge. Otherwise, we're stuck.
It reminds me of this conversation that Will Smith had with his wife, Jada, in their Real Talk a few years ago. It's Googleable if anyone's interested. But he says, you were giving the unconditional love to Jaden, who was doing this crazy movie, Karate Kid or whatever, and they put him through a rigorous physical training. And he's like, my job as the father is to allow him to suffer to a limit. He's like, my job to father this child is to push him for suffering, but to a limit, like you're saying, which is his
of appropriate amount of challenge.
Yeah.
Not something that it's not like you will send your 7 years old to, I don't know, go and do some shopping for you on their own, or something inappropriate, not something, you don't give the task to fail, you give task to succeed. You give them an opportunity to reassure themselves that they're strong enough to do it.
Yeah.
And this is beautiful for both girls and boys. It's not just for the boys or just for the girls. It's great for both. We want to know that our action, this is a part of the positive psychologist, that our action causes the impact, that if we have a goal, we can achieve it. And of course, if that approach stems from the childhood and you've been given some goals and you achieve them, then you have the positive reinforcement, knowing that what you want is achievable.
Right. Well, I love this conversation. I feel like you and I could go on for a long time.
Oh, definitely.
Different, topics and diverge into subtopics. I just want to come back to, maybe offering some people some advice of how to start, maybe some books that you recommend, maybe, offering people where they can find you and your practice just before we close, so we leave them with something. I think one of the best ways that people can start is, I know you said look around at, what you love and dislike in other people. I love that advice. Also reading. I think reading is so important. That's how I started my journey. Of course, also with a therapist and a coach, I think that's super important to get professional help, but some people can't afford it. But if they can, I think that's a great thing to do. But for me as well, it was finding silence and stillness, because that's when some real core stuff comes through. And we're so busy, and social media is sending us notifications all the time. And our world is telling us we need to go out and do things all the time, that we don't have a lot of stillness. And it's when I personally find stillness and quietude and a solitude. I'm not saying be a loner all the time, but that's when a lot of that core, authentic, real self stuff comes through. So that's a piece of advice I would like to offer. But let me leave the floor to you before we close as to like, if you've got any resources or, want to share where people can find you as well, that would be great.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. It is Alina Polner. I share a lot of different resources, information. I always say the sooner you stop complaining to your friends and family about your life and accept your life and say that I'm actually in charge of my life and my choices. So my choices brought me to this situation right here, right now. So I actually choosing it. And if you're choosing it, they say, yes, I'm choosing this life and that's it. But if it's not the life you want, then you should embark on your journey and start reading, resourcing. If you can find professional help, that's the best you can do, because the person can reflect on what you might not see in yourself and help you get there better and faster and get more motivation and better results. This acceptance of the life and saying that this is where I am right here, right now. Do I want to change my life, or why don't I want to change? And start reading about the archetypes, about who am I really am. Am I actually a queen? Do I like to empower people, or do I want to heal people? Do I have more of a ruler energy, or do I have more of a feminine energy? Do I want more to belong and create this nurturing environment for others? Or do I want to set up the rules and give energy and motivation for people to go on? These are all the questions you can find the answers. And once you find a very important part of anyone's life, the life is dull without the mission. We all came here for a reason, and we all can find our mission once we embark on our self-discovery journey. And once we discovered ourselves, we can help others to help them to accept themselves as what you are. There's nothing more beautiful than being with a person who is being himself. This is what I'm okay, you're okay. And that's the most amazing thing. But what else I wanted to add is, so finding your purpose is ultimately how can you contribute to the good of the world? What your personal experience can help to make the world a better place? Is it sustainability? Is it psychology? Is it helping those who are weaker than yourself? What can you do? And once you find the mission, you, as what we say, enable the neurochemistry. You get so high on dopamine because the whole activity becomes rewarding. You don't do it for the result. You do it for the sake of doing it. And this is how we get our superpowers.
I love that. Are there any books or like free resources or podcasts that you found could be helpful for you or your clients?
I do share a lot on my Instagram, so follow me.
Okay.
Alina Polner. And I might just add a few resources. Maybe we can add them at the podcast in written form. Yeah, I'd love that.
Well, I love what you just said, that a life without mission is dull. And I'm going to close on that. Thank you so much for your time and for your experience. So much. It's been lovely chatting with you, and I can't wait to have many more chats with you in the future.
Yes, me too. Same here. Thank you so very much, and thank you for listening, and wishing you all finding your purpose and archetypes and living your best life.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. Please share with family and friends that you feel could benefit from this episode, and make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a rating and review to support the show. Check out the links below for more information about my guests and where to find them, and make sure you're following me on Instagram at wholesome_practice to learn more about what I do. I appreciate you being here, and I'll see you on the next one.